Welcome back to the Cloud Exchange on Federal News Network. We're going to continue our conversation with Cordell Schachter, the Chief Information Officer for the Transportation Department. Now, Cordell, in last segment, we heard a lot about your top three priorities: cyber, workforce, kind of development, better, agile, more iterative development, modern development. We went through cyber quite a bit. Let's jump into the workforce side of the discussion. As DOT and really any organization, any agency moves more and more applications to the cloud, the workforce has got to shift too. How are you taking that on to ensure the workforce is ready for modern technology, to deliver modern services, and all the like that comes with those challenges?
So I think, again, following the having the technology serve our requirements, what's really changed is I believe a permanent change in where the workforce will be located, and whether it's primarily in an office over time. I think we'll have many more people teleworking or remote on a regular basis. And certainly ubiquitous cloud computing gives those people an opportunity to contribute. I'm one of those old school types who still believes there's no replacement for the in-person exchange and the lobby conversations where sometimes you can solve a problem during a break in a meeting that you were at loggerheads during a meeting and couldn't arrive at a consensus. So for reasons like that, as well as the development of new staff and mentoring and coaching, there are unique opportunities when you're in person, but we're still going to have that much larger workforce working remotely, and cloud certainly helps us do that. It changes the profile that the federal government presents toward potential employees, and in this field, we've been probably at 0% or negative unemployment for years and years. So if you're a qualified person, you can probably get a job of your choosing, public or private sector. I would say that for some people like me and others that I work with, the challenge and the rewards of working for the government and serving the public are irreplaceable. And you can't find similar opportunities on the private side. So if anybody watching today likes what you're hearing and thinking of applying, look at USA Jobs under US DOT and IT. We've got a bunch of listings there. So we're aggressively hiring for cyber, data positions, infrastructure, application development, project managers, you name it. So we have important roles to fill. We're also now leaning into creating a much larger internship program to bring opportunities to either recent college graduates or people who are new to the workforce that might entertain a position at USDOT's Office of the CIO. So we'll provide a lot of mentoring and coaching to entry-level type positions in hopes of both growing our own leadership and also building a more diverse workforce, as well as one that is better insulated against the great retirement that people have been talking now for a number of years and is probably taking place as we're talking. I mentioned earlier, we're looking to invest in the people that are here, so it's not just about recruiting the best and the brightest, but continuing to invest in them while they're on staff here, and either to make them better in their current positions or to prepare them for their next position. So we take seriously that responsibility.
You mentioned two things I just want to do a quick follow-up on. First is you've mentioned you're really looking to hire across the board cyber, data, infrastructure, application development, project managers. Roughly how many openings do you have, or is it that constant churn? We always seem to have 3 to 5 to 10 openings that we're trying to fill because of movement.
So we have a very large organization of about over 400 contract and federal employee positions. We currently have about 70 vacancies spread across our department. And because of things like the Great Retirement, because of the changes both during COVID, coming back from COVID, I think we're at an especially busy time of entry and exit, either from the workforce or from one position or organization to another. And I think people are taking advantage of that and trying different opportunities.
70 vacancies seems like a lot, but as you said, you have over 400. So it's all kind of in you got to weigh the ins and outs. You also mentioned interns. I had a great conversation with the CIO over at the Office of Personnel Management several months ago. And I think he said last year he had like 19 interns, the most interns he's ever had. I'm not sure you'll be able to handle 19, but we're just in the beginning of the summer. Do you have some interns who have come in? Are they working in the CIO shop? How are you kind of using those folks as obviously to bring the next generation through?
Yeah, the trade-off with the with interns is, as summer interns, basically they become familiar with your organization, maybe familiar with the tasks that you want them to do, and then it's time to go back to school. So what we're really looking to offer here is not only the summer internship, which basically dips a toe, but especially for people in the DMV, an opportunity to be an intern all year round and to juggle some hours with us with your schoolwork, so that you can directly put into place something that you're learning if you're in a CS program or a CS related program or a CS plus program, or even if you're not a computer science major, but you're majoring in English, but you don't see yourself as an English teacher and you think your career might be in IT, you can get some good practical experience working for us or a similar organization. So with my team in New York City, we had great success with this, building relationships with local colleges within the organization itself. So we always attracted the top intern candidates and were able to grow our own, so to speak, where when we had openings, to the degree that the civil service system permitted it, we were able to board those people into our permanent opening. So I'm looking to grow the same sort of thing here, and especially partner with institutions such as the historically black colleges and universities to really develop close relationships, to emphasize future hiring to improve the diversity of our workforce and DOTs, as well as to give opportunities to the students in those colleges and universities.
I think so many agencies are looking for that next generation to come in. Do you get a sense of what your workforce looks like? Are you more people closer to retirement age than people under 30, over 60, under 30? Or how's DOT done over the years or in the IT world, generally speaking?
Yeah, I think we may have, more at the more advanced levels than the entry levels or beginner, if you will, levels. Some of that is going to happen kind of naturally, like the way buses seem to bunch up at the end of the route. No matter what you do to space them out, you wind up with that occurring. And I think that's somewhat because as you have more or less cadres or classes or cohorts of people starting around the same time, they tend to travel with each other. But I think the way you mitigate that over the long run is to have and maintain these relationships with the educational institutions in addition to traditional hiring practices.
Does the fact that you work at the transportation department, does that attract a specific type of technology person? We know technology is technology, right? The cloud is the cloud, whether you're at an interior department or a transportation department. But because obviously we're focused today at the Cloud Exchange on travel and transportation, does it bring in a specific type of person or not so much in the IT world?
Well, what I saw in New York City is among the urban planning or planning areas, transportation was the hot area. At the federal level, I don't have a sense yet of what the hot area is. Certainly cyber is hot, and a lot of schools that 5 years ago didn't offer a cyber certificate or a cyber concentration now all do. So, but that's in response to market demand. Among the federal candidates, my exposure during my 19 months here has been limited. So I don't have a sense for what that recent college graduate who wants to go into federal service, what they're looking for. I don't have a sense of that yet.
And like CIOs, you were lucky enough to come from a transportation background, being, as you mentioned, New York City, but a lot of CIOs come into an organization that maybe they're just worried about, how do I make sure the mission gets the right technology, and I got to worry about that technology piece versus what the mission side. I rely on people for that. One last piece about the workforce I just want to touch upon, then we're going to hit upon your other priority. Over the last few years, we've talked a lot about, in terms of the government, moving folks from low skill to higher skill, kind of more menial type of work to more advanced analytic type of work. Are you all using, for instance, are you taking advantage of some of those things that the cloud can offer, like robotics process automation, like advanced analytics, to get people away from, or automation, and for a cyber perspective, to get away from some of those, again, lower value or more time-consuming tasks?
Yeah, I think there's, and I saw this before my time at USDOT, there's a steady progression of moving up the food chain, so to speak, and that you are able to retain a more highly skilled workforce by increasing the challenge and complexity of their work. And you definitely want to move up that food chain. So the amount of care and feeding that might be done, say, with your cloud storage or email, it's less labor intensive at a granular level than it once was. Now, we've made it more difficult for ourselves by practices such as multi-factor authentication and zero trust. So we've taken on new challenges to replace some of those, but those challenges are much more difficult than what we faced just 5-6 years ago. So I believe there's like no substitute for experience, and having people at the Department of Transportation that have transportation experience, it's much easier for them to identify with a particular operating administration's challenge, even if their expertise was not in that particular sector. I think they can apply lessons they may have learned in another sector. And that's really one of the joys of working at DOT, because so much of what we do is very tangible. And when we do it well, whether it's about grant making or cybersecurity, oversight of various types of programs and advocating policies, we can see the changes that we make in people's lives by our work.
I appreciate that. I think sometimes it's that understanding of the topic and the technology is really the best of both worlds. I remember I spoke to a CIO who was with an FAA, and it just came up that he used to be a pilot. And I was like, oh, then you have the best of both worlds. He goes, I do, flying and technology. So I thought that was the perfect fit. Let's move over to one of your other priority, which is the modern development, this idea of really taking the applications and the mission areas and really ensuring that how you're developing new or refactoring old applications is in the modern way. When I think of modern, I hear Agile, I hear DevSecOps. I imagine those two are among the things you all either have implemented or are implementing.
Absolutely. And I think where DOT needs to grow, it needs to have some both in-house capability to do that work on its own, to be able to become expert at those skills, and that not only will we be able to produce modern applications and project manage them in a modern way, but it also improves our ability to supervise and oversee the business partners who we hire to expand our span of control. So with a small federal workforce compared to the challenge that's needed in modernizing our application portfolio, we need skills in both areas, and there's good opportunities for learning by doing, as well as then applying that not only to our own projects, but to the projects where we've hired professional services to help us get them done. And it almost like circles back again to cybersecurity, because a lot of what we want to do in cybersecurity needs to be managed as a project. And by having that project management capability, we can achieve those goals more efficiently and with greater certainty that will arrive at them. And with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're also trying to promulgate the administration's policy of making systems and projects built with grant money resilient to all threats, especially cybersecurity, so that those systems too being built by state, local, tribal, territorial jurisdictions are also secure by design. Similarly, we would like to see best practice in cybersecurity employed by our grantees using bipartisan infrastructure law money. And we ask them to improve cybersecurity through the projects that they create using a four-pronged approach. First, appointing a cybersecurity point of contact, having a cybersecurity incident reporting plan. 3, have a cybersecurity incident response plan, what systems need to stay online, what systems are backed up, etc. And then 4, performing a cybersecurity self-assessment to really understand the nature of their cybersecurity practices across their enterprise. They may seem like common sense, but they're actually among CISA's top cybersecurity guidance and recommendations, and we're promulgating them to grantees so that they build their projects secure by design.
And just, I think the grant money, attaching that with some cybersecurity requirements is not necessarily new, but I think there is a new focus from the administration on that. And I think that's really important, given how much money goes out the door from grants. It's actually more than procurement, which a lot of people get surprised about, not just obviously DOT, but across the government. Let me take a half a step back and ask about your internal efforts. Where are you at with developing, again, that agile approach, that DevSecOps approach? How is the mission side part of that discussion? How do you bring them in? Talk a little bit about that process.
So we've had internal teams, interdisciplinary teams, for example, create a DevSecOps playbook. Putting that into practice on legacy systems is difficult, but adding that to the system that we're creating or will create gives you a greater opportunity. And that's where you really change the culture, something else we were talking about earlier. The legacy technologies give you fewer options if they're not themselves modern systems, as well as present greater risks to the enterprise. So that's where we really try to leverage these best practices. And by being forward-looking and assuming the sale that we're going to modernize, we're going to do it in smart ways, is where you can take advantage of those opportunities to really propel your enterprise forward.
Do you, generally speaking, have a goal of how much money or how many systems you would like to get out of that technical debt? If your current number is 70% of systems are considered technical debt, we'd like to get that down to 60%, get that down to 50%. Do you have that you were able to talk a little bit to?
I think what we really, so I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, because I'm not going to have a short metric like that. But I'm going to answer it with something that I think is a best practice that both should be followed both within DOT, our grantees, and across the federal enterprise. And that's we really want to be risk informed and risk directed. So we want to apply our efforts to those things first that present the greatest risk. And we define risk in more of a textbook way. It's not just a list of scary things. Anybody can put that together. But which of those scary things do you approach first? And that has to do with both the impact of that scary thing, if it happens, but also the likelihood that it's going to happen. And we take risks every day, and we know that even though the impact could be catastrophic, the likelihood or probability is so slight that we don't sweat it. Like both of us are in rooms. Well, the ceiling could come crashing down on our heads, and that would be pretty catastrophic. But I don't see either one of us wearing a hard hat, right, or sitting under scaffolding, because we have faith that that's not going to happen. And some of that is because we know there's building codes, et cetera. But the idea that here's something that's very scary, but we don't invest a whole lot of time in or a lot of thought in because its probability is so low. And we need to take that same sort of approach, whether it's in a sector environment in one of our transportation modes, or it's in the enterprise IT. And where that boundary now is graying is a lot of operating technology that used to be on mechanical systems, used to be separate from the IT network, if it was on a network at all. That OT is now becoming IT and really is best managed using those same IT controls. And who are some of the smartest people on that? It's your IT people. And then where some of that IT retains an IT OT component, now you need partnership on both sides. So in transportation, as in many other fields, the lines between where IT now needs to cross over and help are pushing out. And coming back to the central theme here, and all of it needs to follow a risk-based approach. We need to do risk assessments. We need to capture risk registers where we're able to prioritize risks according to their probability and impact.
And I imagine this is something you're doing every single day, because the risk to one system that today is different than tomorrow. You must have a process by which you're doing that, and then prioritizing those risks and prioritizing those changes to those systems using the modern methodology.
Well, and the more you learn about one system, the more you learn about all the systems, even though they may be on different technology.
Absolutely, because in some way, we all realize that many of these systems are all interconnected, and you take down one, you affect downstream.
Well, I'd also say some of them were created around the same time. And even though the platforms may be different, they may be subject to the same vulnerabilities. And it's no longer that, we're most afraid of the system just failing. We're engaged or in the middle of a cyber war that's occurring every day with threat actors who have resources solely focused on interfering with our operations, sometimes staging those attacks from some of those cloud systems that we've been discussing today.
Cordell, we could talk longer. Unfortunately, I think we're going to be out of time for this session of the Cloud Exchange. So let me thank my guest. Cordell Schachter is the Chief Information Officer of the Transportation Department. I very much enjoyed talking to you today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Glad to be here, Jason. Thank you.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more from the Cloud Exchange.